Creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to today, the day of war. I could do a little preamble about player characters engaging in mass combat and all that sort of thing. But today I think we're going to have, as usual, far too many ideas of what we can bring to the day of war. So, yes, we're going to get into our intro, but please come in with your greatest ideas about our tabletop role playing games. I'll give you mine. Let's get into it. The day of war. All right. We all know that tabletop role playing games started from essentially miniatures, reenacting of battles and such. But as we've gotten into our modern context of role playing games, that um, we play individual characters that adventure in these fantastical worlds. And in some ways, just because of the personal portion of role playing games, the war portion of it, the battles, have been kind of separated a little bit. But it doesn't mean we can't engage in mass battle and mass battle combat. But I think we need to think about it a little bit differently. So on today, this day of war, you can contextualize this narratively in any way you want. Maybe there are a number of nations in your setting that are in a kind of a Cold War, hot war kind of thing, skirmish battles. And today is the day that all the negotiations broke down and the player characters are neutral members. Maybe they have nothing to do with the battles happening across borders, but the players must navigate their way through it. Or it could be extremely personal. The players themselves are tasked with um, gathering and giving orders to battle forces and maneuvering them on the battlefield as the player characters themselves must engage in various types of combat. But more specifically, I can see the player characters having their own personal story with a larger war around them, happening around them. And I think that's, for me, I think that would be the better part of engaging in the day of war. So, of course, when it comes to, while we love to imagine ourselves in the place of people on battlefields, it can be very difficult because we think of them as moving parts, as having far too many moving parts. And I would contend with you that what we don't want to do is roll hundreds of dice for hundreds of combatants. What we want to do is think of them uh, as living forms of the environment, of puzzle pieces happening around the player characters, and the dangers and the ability for them to manipulate the dangers around them is what a battlefield is. It just so happens that a battlefield is filled with living people with blood and guts flowing everywhere and those kind of things. But really, we want the feel of it, not necessarily to reenact every single battle that happens on the battlefield. Um, Unfortunately, for those who have passed and given of their lives in major battles, there are lots of examples we can pull from to make our tabletop experiences uh, richer by drawing from the experiences, unfortunately, of those who have given of their lives. And for me, I see, especially in fantasy tabletop gaming, while we do have like medieval battles we can pull from, I think it's more appropriate to pull from our modern day Dungeons and Dragons and D20 games and fantasy games, to pull from World War I and World War II reenactments and just transferring the technological improvements into a more fantastical element. Yeah, yeah. Like Shai goes, eliminate tactical war game rules through interactive storytelling. Yeah, exactly. What would Andrew do? Exactly. It's not about maneuvering troops on a battlefield. It's not really about rolling 50 dice because you have 50 cavalry or anything like that. It's about the feel and the ebb and flow. So we have many examples of mini games where we can use tactical battle and warfare or something. A very simple thing we used to do in our games when I was much younger. I haven't done this in a long time. Is that we would attach, we would use step dice or chain dice to represent the capabilities and power and special abilities of different tactical troops. So the your farmers with pitchforks was a D4, and we would move up from there. If they were armored or they had better weapons, we'd move up to a D6, D8, and so on. If they had excellent training, if they were prepared in um, environmentally, like if they were entrenched or they had the high ground or they had better supplies, and then we would manipulate that way. And then in between the battles with the player characters, we would compare the dice. Maybe the farmers are a D4, and there's like armored cavalry that's a D12, and you roll against each other, because there's always the chance that one side's morale or their supply chain or anything like that would be offset. And arrogance has a lot to do with battle as well. And just maybe the armored cavalry aren't as prepared to be in this fight against the farmers as they thought. So it's possible for the farmers to beat them, and that's how we would do it that way. And then we would do a 1 2 3. So it would be an odd number. Usually we do three, and we make three rolls, and whoever got the highest won. Um, Yep, yeah, like Shy Squad, yeah, like peasants beating their plows into glaives, bardashes, and billhooks. As a matter of fact, side note, that's kind of why I love role playing, because when I started opening up these books, it was like, what is this, French and German and Italian? I don't know all these weapons and things, and I just had a voracious appetite for it. But if I could pull from other media to really engage in the day of war and have this interact. I guess this is more of me doing my talking head more so than usual, but um, the personal stories of warriors in battle, I feel, tends to be the more interesting thing to speak of, rather than finding out who wins the overall battle. And what do I mean by that? Um, we could tell a lot of stories and come up with far more dynamics than just which side won. For example, players may need to rescue, reinforce, or save soldiers that are trapped or behind enemy lines or losing in a battle. And the players you want to add that time schedule to it so that the players don't get distracted and just want to beat everything about the head and shoulders. No, they have a purpose. They need to get from A to B, which may be very dangerous for them to get there, to reinforce or save or pull out those that are entrenched or surrounded. And that may be a mission all unto itself. And so, therefore, the challenge is ignoring the dangers and navigating through and fighting through dangers to get from A to B. And once they get to B, the location they need to get to, then they need to apply things. They need to heal and buff and protect and ensure that those people are, their allies are safe. It could be something as simple as getting a message or a missive from A to B. There's a one take movie. It wasn't filmed in one take, but it felt like it. There's a movie called 1917, and the entire movie is centered around two young soldiers, individuals, to get a message to the front line to say, please don't do this because you're probably going to get killed. And they have to navigate through any number of trench like warfare. And that's where the real story comes about. It's not about those two soldiers winning. The win condition in that is to get a message from A to B. Players, you can absolutely do this, especially with lower level, more personal, less fantastical storytelling, even if fantastical things are going on around them. Dragons flying overhead, wizards on carpets and brooms, blasting each other with fireballs overhead, and then the player characters may be necessary to navigate through a dangerous realm below what's going on above them. Um, Having the idea of the Alamo entrenching themselves is also an idea. Maybe there is an open field and the player characters are tasked with building a fort or some kind of defensive measure, and the players need to come up with an idea. Hey, I'm a wizard. I'm going to, manipulate the earth to make a big wall or barricade or vanguard or something. Maybe other players are thinking about, we're going to cut down some trees and make spikes and put it in their hands to create a defensive posture that maybe the people they're defending they have no skill in that at all, or they're working with very capable other soldiers. And once they're given those instructions, the soldiers are like, yes, absolutely. So that may be a thing. They may even need to, thinking like a zombie apocalypse, they may even need to, instead of venturing out, it's survive 3 days until the sun comes up in the west kind of idea. I can't remember the exact quote from Gandalf, but the idea may be for the players to, guess what, it there's going to be an escalation of battle, and you just need to survive for 3 days or 2 hours or whatever, or there's going to be 5 waves of combat and you just need to stay here. No matter what you do, don't move, stay here. Like the movie 300. It may also be that the players may not have to engage in battle at all. Maybe you task the players with, you must cross enemy lines, gather information, and come back and let other people know, who are then tasked with using that information to go around the enemy. And the players, of course, that is, yep, absolutely. Drew says, hold the line. That absolutely is a very easy, simple, but can be a very dynamic way to engage the players in the day of war. Hold the line. And foreshadowing a lot of this that's happening, basically being above board. Let your players know, guess what? The first wave isn't it. It's going to be an escalation of danger. Okay, there's going to be 13 hobgoblins. The next wave, 52. The next wave, 287. And the PCs might be like, whoa, do we really want to stay here? And okay, well, that's the job. What do? Do we call for help? If we call for help and reinforcements, that's pulling resources away from the true objective, which is to assault the Lich Queen's realm or something. But we need to hold the line here to protect the resources. All those things. A lot of things that happen in war are, I've heard this comment before, and I don't know where to get it from, but I've heard that between 5 and 20 individuals are needed to support every soldier that fights on a battlefield. That, of course, is manipulated up and down based on the age and era of the battle. But there's a lot of people behind the scenes that allow soldiers in battle to do what they do, from the blacksmiths and people who create their uniforms and weaponry and food and livestock and such. And as we get into more modern day, to who build the high-tech weapons, who are the communicators, who are the people who are the spies and scouts and information gatherers that happen in war before a soldier even touches the ground. And the player characters may be part of that information gathering system, going behind lines, finding out about, talking with people to bribe and threaten and cajole and lie to get information about what the enemy capabilities are or where they plan on moving. There's also a lot of, in battle, it is completely inappropriate to have a 50-50 battle. In other words, it's always about manipulating battles into your favor and having overwhelming forces, to the point that in many ways, some commanders even feel that not shooting one arrow, bullet, or whatever, if you can win through overwhelming force and just have the other side give up, you've won everything. You've lost nothing on your side and you gain everything on the other side when they give up. So having overwhelming forces is the point of battle. And when the player characters understand that, you could even use this as a dangling thread of a threat. The proverbial sword. Oh, I don't remember the sword that hangs by the thread over the throne room. Sort of. I was about to say Damascus, and that's not it. It's there's a line. Anyway, the point of it is that the player characters may be told that the enemy is gathering enough forces that it will be almost certain doom if the player characters confront the enemy, because every side wants to have superior forces. So the tension involved in this could be right now there's no conflict, but you've got 3 hours before they assemble their forces, and you're going to be attacked by, I don't know, uh, um, undead warriors on the back of a fleet, sortie of flying chimera. Yes, there's a sort of the Democles. I don't remember, but you get the point. It's the story was that there is a lot of being in power and being in command is not the best thing, because floating over your head is always this threat of someone taking your life, of always making the next mistake, of everyone looking at you and think, holding you to a higher standard than anybody else. You're essentially playing God when you are a noble, a king, a leader of a group of people, and it's basically like having a bladed sword above your head, held by a thread. But in when the player characters are given the missions, you could really play the day of war by, if the players are not motivated, they are not proactive. A reactive thing is just be give them instructions, give them orders, and especially you can make this extremely dramatic if they're given instructions and orders by individuals that have clearly little or no skill in combat, right? And they're doing it by moving pieces on a board. They've never been on the front lines, and this allows you to give the players a lot of agency, where the players fold their arms and pout and go like, "We're not listening to that person." Um, Throw into the mix officers that are above the player characters uh, uh, in status and the hierarchy, but then throw them into the battle with the player characters themselves. And you're going to have a lot of like player characters going like, I don't know if I want to waste a heal spell on that person. They don't know what they're doing, right? You could throw that into the mix as well. That makes it very dramatic. The Talking about the support personnel in the backgrounds, players, we know player characters for the most part, especially in modern gaming, don't need to worry about food and shelter and rest, but everybody else needs to. So, watering all of their mounts, maybe elephants or camels or horses or water buffalo or whatever they're riding on or using as labor animals. All their soldiers need to rest and have food and not they need proper shelter instead of being in the frozen north or torrential rains or extreme heat or trying to navigate through extremes in like mountainous regions where they have to get from A to B. It takes a lot of, it's almost more travel going vertically than it is horizontally to get from one place to another. Even taking troops across any kind of aquatic realm means that you have to have ships to put the troops in, and you need to have navigators, and you hope for great weather, and but you don't want it too good, because then if you don't have any wind, it can't get the sails. But then you need to have enough uh, manpower to move the oars of the ships. And of course, on the ships, you need to have all of your food and all of your supplies. And taking care of all of that, keeping the player characters using their special magical abilities to protect ships from being set on fire or sabotaged or sunk from enemies from below, or getting trapped in chains or whatever other kinds of things, being attacked from the shoreline with uh, ballista and catapults and such. Players could really engage in that as well. Um, One of my favorite things, you guys know, is using the environment and having environmental effects, and having a list of environmental effects that can happen in a battle, and having the player characters have to navigate through the air quotes the battlefield to avoid those things could be really fun. I mean, in the movie 300, where they make the comment of we will blot out the sun with our arrows, and our protagonist is like, then we will fight in the shade. Players may need to travel across the open field where there's nothing but javelins and arrows being flung at them, like literally blotting out the sun, and having the player characters make their saving throws, hide under maybe destroyed siege machines to find shelter, and knowing that the faster they go across, the faster they go, the least amount of time they'll be in danger, but maybe the more vulnerable they will because they're not paying attention to protecting themselves. Whereas maybe if they're very careful, it'll take them twice as long to get across the battlefield, but maybe they can defensively protect themselves from all the flung arrows. And of course, anything being flung through the air, as an example, could be a danger, from arrows to javelins and crossbows to ballista and catapults and trebuchets to lightning bolts being called down from the sky and fireballs and things like that. Yep. Drew says makes 573 saving throws. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Despite the fact that no matter how much you think that sounds correct, you don't do that. What you do is you just make it an environmental thing and go, listen, you've got movement. You can take your dash action as an example, which makes you move twice as fast. You can move carefully and move at half speed. So now you've got three options. You've got your middle, you got your fast, you got your extremely slow. Well, if you're moving very fast, apply disadvantage to those saves. If you're moving really slow, apply advantage to it. Or, which is the better option, is players have a great idea and you go, sounds good. Hey, everybody, hack the wheels off of the wagon, turn it upside down. Everybody get under it. We're all going to put the damn wagon on our back, the wooden cover or something, and we're going to slowly go through the battlefield or something. If they come up with an idea like that, I just slow clap. Great. That sounds good. Give an automatic success. Or if it takes 3 rounds of saves to get through, well, then if they dash, only make it 1. If they move slow, make it 4 or 5, right? Things like that. You can very easily do those things. And of course, you pull from the rules you already have in the game. If this is a very arcane styled battlefield thing, and there are hobgoblin pterodactyl riders throwing javelins, down on top of the PCs, and the player characters are going across the battlefield, maybe they're only circling overhead in area A, but when they get to area B, maybe there's cavalry, stampeding through the region, or going into the trench warfare. Maybe there are deep trenches filled with mud, or explosive charges, landmines, claymores, barbed wire, deadly chemicals and oozes and things like that. And since we love ourselves some fantasy, fantastical elements pulled into our wars many times, so pull them in there. The low level characters fighting dragons. We often hear about, like, yeah, low level characters fighting dragons. We say, well, it's unfair if you randomly roll a dragon that second level characters could never win. And the point of it is, no, 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 no. What you want to do is, if you have a random table of random encounters, is our creativity never stops there. What we want to do is incorporate it into the narrative. If there are fire breathing dragons circling overhead, maybe they only strafe the party once, and the party knows the dragon's going to swoop down in 3 rounds. Where's your player character going to be? Because if you're standing out in the open, you're probably dead. The PCs might go, okay, one's like, I'm quick, I'm light on my feet, I'm gonna run my ass over to the tree line and disappear. Great. Okay, what's the other person gonna do? Well, I'm armored and I'm slow. I'm gonna take cover under the burning siege engine, or siege tower, or whatever that was knocked down, so the dragon doesn't see me. Giving players options and then letting them be creative. And then maybe on the 3rd round, the dragon comes by and strafes with acid or fire or cold or whatever you want to have incorporated into your world. And then that makes the PCs feel good. It makes your players like, oh, I was smart about this, and not have to actually fight. Maybe the dragon does it once and flies off. or maybe the dragon never swoops down at all, right? And the players are just scared about something. Drew says, if you dash across the battlefield, make sure not to stumble over the corpses there. Yeah, I was working on a D100 table of like of a battlefield intricacies, and like one of them might be an enemy or an ally just grabs you by the ankle and is like screaming out in pain, like "save me," which player characters with high stealth sneaking around trying to get through a battlefield, maybe an ally screaming their head off like, "Oh no, save me, get me out of here, mommy," or whatever, right? Might call attention to the sneaky ranger or rogue or something like that. And what do? How do you shut them up? Do you like drop down on them and shut their mouth? Do you run for it? Do you hack off the hand of an ally? What if it's an enemy doing the same thing? Or and you could go on and on with this, uh, tripping over a glyph or an explosive device that might go off, but your foot is sitting on it. The I don't know, an armored knight that's dead, but their horse is still running through the battlefield and across where you're at. Or maybe there's you turn the corner of the burning siege engine and there's like 50 people on either side of the battle, all doing battle in your way. Do you navigate through it or do you try to go around them? Because they're all ignoring you as the player character. They're doing battle amongst themselves. But if you put yourself into the middle of the melee, you might get accidentally stabbed or whatever, things like that. Thomas Anderson's gravity bomb mines that, when blown up, the only effect is it causes an area effect where gravity reverses. Yeah, a tank will fall up until it ends, then falls back down. Yep, exactly. You could throw all kinds of crazy things. Gravity being manipulated, time and space being manipulated, implosion grenades, and you could, especially with science fiction, well, fantasy counts in this. That could very much happen. Hey, there are landmine glyphs on the ground that if you cross it, you will be shape changed into something insignificant like a rabbit or a mouse or a small pigeon. You could even have poisonous gases sweep through that, of course, are acidic and dissolve flesh or cause blindness or cause choking and cause you to fall to the ground, or it's just obscuring, or you breathe it in and it makes you want to vomit up everything, or it causes instant paralysis or transforms you into stone or anything like that. Yes. Ta says, sorry, when when I say mines, I mean like in a minefield where everything is normal until one is set off, causing reverse gravity. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Um, and the player characters needing to navigate maybe through a a field of landmines and whatever those landmines may be for your fantasy war or battle. Also, when it comes to small group squad tactics and such, the player characters may have control over one to half a dozen of these groups, and the players may be aware of dangers ahead of them. And then, by virtue of them giving instructions to where their squads go, it could be that the players have okay. The players may need to engage with a group of giants, a group of constructs, or a horde of undead. And the PCs are like, okay, we're going to send our squad to stop the giants and the undead, but we're going to go after the constructs ourselves, right? And that might be how you kind of get to give the players some agency. Like, no, you're gonna confront some danger, but you got to pick which one, and then have the other squads that you have control over confront the other ones as well. Oftentimes in battles, things get destroyed. And so sabotage may be the goal, to destroy a bridge, to destroy a siege weapon, to destroy a wall. And the play that might be just a small mission amongst many bigger missions. Hey, we need to get 1,000 troops across a moat. Hey, player characters, you got to come up with the idea. How do you do it? And the PC's, all right, we're gonna swim across the moat, climb the castle wall, open up the portcullis and drop the drawbridge down. Great, okay, and then you engage in that. Heck, just swimming across a moat in and of itself might require the player characters to doff their armor, take, use it, put a dagger in the teeth and swim, or go through a sewer system, or fly overhead and get dropped in, or something like that. Give them a lot of agency to accomplish a goal, to make them feel like badasses when they have to reinforce many of their enemies. Oh man. Uh, TA says, oh man, Carl Smallwood was talking about internet via carrier pigeons. So silly. Deadman says, check eclipse phase. There are zones in several adventures where the rules of physics change. Yeah, there are. Yeah. Oh yeah. In eclipse phase, transhumanist, science fiction, exploration, and confronting existential threats. Many of those things can happen. Hey, talking about existential threats, well, we talked about the day of black orbs. If on the battlefield there are random spheres of annihilation being placed certain places, ouch! Especially if there are individuals that have control over that. A a an entrenched enemy that has access to magic and magical powers, rods and staves being used to control constructs and like battle wagons and or kaiju or something like that. Player characters may go, we're not going to fight the Tarrasque. We're going to fight the person that's controlling the Tarrasque and sneak it. Yeah. Hey, Zamara. Hey. Yep. Absolutely. Glad to have you back. Z says, as I'm currently running a Rogue Trader game with heavy war elements, this is very relevant to me. Cool. Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. And it's good to see you there, Z. Thomas Anderson says, this day's topic reminds me of the portion of Gustav Holst's The Planets, okay? Specifically Mars, Bringer of War, which is such mechanical sounding, futuristic sound and feel. I'm going to have to take a look at that. And I've already been chastised about not having seen any of the extensive Airbender series. I will correct that. I will. Totally was ripped to make both the Empire and Darth Vader's themes and the theme for, I believe, Total Recall and Red Planet. Oh, combine those together. Not positive now, but I know Holst had The Planets ripped by some of the greats of our day of soundtrack writers. Are you saying there's some comparison to like Red Planet, Green Planet, Blue Planet series about going to Mars? But whatever that the case might be, instead of thinking of, yes, we can think of a war from overhead, like playing chess or Stratego or something like that, right? Checkers or whatever. But getting down into the trench portion of it, the personal battles, I think is the greatest place for us to pull a lot of storylines, whether it is the player characters maybe needing to become leadership when leadership is gone in a great war, and the player characters must give orders to a demoralized uh, battlefield component. Maybe the players become leaders of 1,000 warriors, but the warriors are like, we don't have any leadership, and we're going to go into battle. And then using everything from we know through, no matter how much we see on paper, we know that there are a lot of immeasurables that we want to measure to have a successful battle. For example, um, making the enemy believe we have overwhelming forces when we don't. For example, in the United States government during, I believe it was World War I and II, there was a cadre of individuals taken from Hollywood whose only job was fake to make the enemy, I think this is World War II, when the enemy looked overhead, they were there to make encampments look like there were more people than there really were. So they would have tents and tanks, and the ground look like there were many troops and a lot of supply runs and things like that going on. And the whole point of it was just to make decoys and send false information. That might be a thing. Player characters may need to be decoys themselves. This is a little bit difficult, but there's a way to do this in mechanically. Maybe the player characters need to convince the enemy that they are being routed. So the player characters need to put up a defense, but at the same time, they don't want to overwhelm the enemy because they want the enemy to follow them to convince the enemy that they should go west instead of east and follow the player characters west, opening up a or splitting forces. So the player characters may need to hit and run, hit the enemy, but not defeat them. They need to run to do something. Maybe the player characters need to the best game is still Go. Yes, I always remember. It's not similar to the game, but I used to be obsessed with playing Othello, the little black and white marble. You flip them over and stuff like that. I just remember playing that a ton of times. Wow. Goose TA's talking about Gustav Holst was the first music writer that introduced the fade, where he had singers that were instructed to sing consistently, no change in volume, while big, heavy doors were slowly closed on them. Oh, wow. Hmm. Fade them throughout um, fade them out through mechanical means instead of their modulation of their voice volume that affects how their voices sound. Oh, that's kind of cool. That's very cool. Um, Also, having some of our favorite fantastical, mythological beasties and monsters and things on battlefields could have a very detrimental effect to things. For example, ghosts or sirens or harpies or anything that controls the minds or casts illusions on battlefields. Again, player characters might be badasses and it doesn't affect them, but if there's a giant illusion of a black dragon on the battlefield, it could destabilize the troops. PC's going, hey, where are you running to? And 55 soldiers going, our asses are getting out of here. We are not standing up to a black dragon, with the player characters trying to convince them it's not real, right? Um, Being mind controlled or possessed by ghosts could be a thing where allies can turn to enemies. It may be that the player characters find out that those bestial warlike hobgoblins are like, we don't really want to be in this battle. We'd really like to get to the other side if you just gave us an opportunity, even though we know that, I don't know, the paladins on that side of on the player's character side are very prejudicial against the hobgoblins. They just want to murder kill them. And the hobgoblins are like, listen, we'd rather be on your side. We don't want to be in a fight, and we're just being manipulated by, you know, the Council of Seven Liches or something like that. Hey, thanks, TA. About sound. Well, again, about manipulation of energies on battlefields. It could be something comes through that deafens the player characters or blinds them with light, or uh, there's a difference between flames or lightning being called down from the sky, which, you know, player characters may need to get undercover, versus the trebuchet that's throwing chunks of their own castle wall into the player characters' battlefields or something. Um, Also, having we know that the things that are very hard to measure, weather, morale, morale being measured by how comfortable the soldiers are, how much food and water they have, how much support they have, how thin the supply lines are. As a matter of fact, um, there's a whole there's a whole it, black market industry within militaries that they know that happens, where different organizations within their own same military will start to scavenge from each other. They will raid each other's food pantries and ammo and weapons and armor, and support staff. To the ones to the west want more, and they very they have a better person, a quartermaster, who's able to divert greater things to the east, even though upper management wants most of that stuff to go to the west, and so on and so forth. Even just destroying supply lines, stopping the enemy from being able to reinforce the hobgoblin horde with food, with water, with slaves, with dire wolves, with pterodactyls that they use to fly overhead, something like that. All right, so all right, Z, here we go. Z says Zamar 0292 says, oh, and Rogue Trader has an Endeavor system, which is useful for this. Basically, break down the war into objectives that are needed to win the war, including what's needed to keep certain objectives, yep, and deny new objectives to other enemies. This includes needing to figure out what you need ahead of time. I'm going to stop right there because I guarantee you're probably saying this, but stealing something from a very popular game that has some of the best mechanical features in it you can steal for any role-playing game is Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark is given a lot of this credit, and I've said this before, that Blades in the Dark, I would vote, if there's a category for this, as being made up of the most number of greatest elements that we can steal for all of our role-playing games. So there are many role-playing games that have maybe better elements to steal, but I think Blades has the most. And one of them are clocks. Yes, it is very Victorian era style, and using clocks and clock towers and watches fits in with the term use clocks, but anything that's like a clock or a timer. So clocks imagine cutting a pizza pie. Clocks, you have a clock with 4, 6, 8, 12 slices in it. And using that with having to keep your objectives and denying the enemy objectives is a very easy way to go, okay, so you need to get intelligence from the enemy, protect supply lines, reinforce your own allies, and maneuver around the enemy, right? That could be a 4-position clock. And the players need to, and maybe the players on their own, pick which portion of the clock to fulfill. But when all 4 are filled, they win. The enemy may also have a clock versus the player characters. And then the player characters may need to decide, okay, do we reinforce our own supply line or sabotage the enemy supply line? Because if we do one, we're not doing the other one. Anyway, to continue to comment, to complete an objective, which getting those things count as objectives. Yep. Lay those things out to the players ahead of time and watch them go. Label each objective with a number of points and have a lower number of total points needed to win the war. Yep, absolutely. And which is a good thing too. Reinforcing your supply line is equal to 2 points. Reinforcing your allies that are very deep into enemy territory might be a 4-point thing. Supplying the enemy with decoys and lies to make it seem like you're producing one objective but not another. Maybe that's only a 1 point, or maybe it's a 5-point thing. So yeah, absolutely, Z. Yep, have a lower number of total points needed to win the war. Exactly. Drew says the Black Dragon might not be real. The goblins which throw acid grenades, however, are real. Exactly, which is a good tactic, right? Like the arrogance of PCs. The Black Dragon's just an illusion. We're just going to walk right through it. And the goblins are like, can't throwing snowballs or like water balloons of acid at them. Like, yeah, you thought it was an illusion, but it ain't. Or it could be an illusion over top of a siege machine with giant wheels and spikes all over it or something like that. TA says, this also reminds me of that alien invasion incoming where the people of Earth are warned and the whole world makes peace thinking they would garner favor from the aliens. But the opposite is true. And the aliens are disappointed because they seeded Earth to make warriors. So they plan to destroy Earth as a failure. Yeah. And I saw what you're saying there, Drew. I look out for you guys because I try not to post things up, if spell check, typing, you guys are on the move, things like that. So I don't use that as I never make fun or something like that. So I get it. Mike Marin says, big shout out for Blades in the Dark. It really shook up the way I think about prepping, running, and playing games. When it comes to battles, here's some other things you can steal from Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark has a quantum resource mechanic. So when you play, to keep from doing the analysis paralysis of prepping for a heist and having 2 to 3 hours of player characters trying to prep a heist, and then it always breaks down to them kicking in the front door and shooting everything. So in Blades in the Dark, you decide how much of a load you're carrying. Are you carrying a light, medium, or heavy load? And in Blades, that load is basically a number of items you're carrying with you. But you don't detail what it is you need. You just decide whether it's light, medium, or heavy. The same could be used in a war or battle. How many supplies are you carrying with your troops? Is it light, so your troops are very nimble? Is it going to be medium, or is it going to be very heavy, and you're bringing with you many extras in case you need to reinforce or supply others that you find along the way? Then, when you need something, you decide. Let's say I'm going to have to come up with a number. Um, I'm going to come up with one, two, three. So light, medium, heavy. So decide what you need for the battle. Decide how much you're carrying for battle, but you don't say what it is. And then when you come into battle and you go, we need to make a phalanx of shields. Okay, since we are lightly encumbered and we only can carry one thing, can that one thing be shields? And you go, yes, that one thing is shields. So now you can all make a shield wall or a phalanx of something, right? We can carry two things. We're going to have shields and we're going to have extremely long pikes to stop the charging cavalry. Can we have that? And the idea is it's quantum equipment. You're carrying a medium load, but we don't know what it is yet until it's used. And in Blades in the Dark, because it's a heist game, you could have lock picking tools, you could have acids, you could have masks that look really like someone else, you could have fake documents, things like that. And I like that. That's something you could very easily steal. The second part of Blades in the Dark is a second part. Another part you can steal is the flashback mechanic. So when we are in the battle, maybe you give the player characters using fifth edition or any other D20 system. Maybe you have some kind of hero point, inspiration, fate point, Benny mechanic, and you can spend one or more to flashback to a thing you've already done. So an example would be you and 30 other soldiers crest the hill. You look down and you see there are 5 times as many hobgoblin warriors as you predicted. And then a player goes, I'd like to do a flashback and have a spy. One of the hobgoblins was a spy, and we made a deal with him. And, a portion of the troops really want to come to our side. And when we get there, they're like mercenaries and they're going to turn on their own kind to keep so that we can pass by so we don't have to engage in this big battle. Sure, spend a point, roll a charisma check, persuasion or whatever it is. Oh, you succeeded. Hey, now when you come down off the hill to confront them, you wave your banner or something like that, or you hold up your medallion. The hobgoblin on the other side holds up their version of it, and then they turn against their own kind and go, this war needs to stop, speaking in hobgoblin and all this kind of business. We're going to lose. We're just going to we're going to hold you at spear point to let our allies go past or something like that. So flashbacking is another thing you can absolutely steal from Blades in the Dark. TA says black dragon as in black rotting flesh instead of breathing acid, breathing smallpox. Ooh, or the black plague would be an interesting switch for a new type of dragon. Hell yeah. You want something to demoralize people? Have something that absolutely positively destroys an ally in the most horrific way over the longest period of time is a way to really demoralize a group. No one wants to see their friends suffer, and suffering is extremely harmful to our psychology. No, a person, I don't want to make the comparison of like seeing someone die instantly versus stretch over a long time. One's better than the other, but we know enemies, terrorist tactics, do a thing where if they can demoralize the enemy, they can demoralize 10 times as many people, 50 times as many people using demoralizing tactics rather than murder killing them. And one of those things is using like IEDs with nails and spikes in it, doing things where where allies are injured, but they are not outright killed. And again, fighting in the worst weather, fighting in the worst terrain, forcing your enemy into needing, how do I say this? Forcing the enemy to make a decision to sacrifice their own allies is another thing where we can't reinforce you because we can't send food and water across the river because they've set the surface of the river on fire. And so they have to see their allies freeze to death, have no water in the desert, things like that. So, yeah. T says, likewise, one that is breath with some sort of swarm of parasites that sting and burrow into the flesh of people. Ow, ow. Hey, listen, wizards, druids, clerics on the battlefield can be pretty damn harmful. Call, summoning swarms of locusts, uh, or swarms of ants, yeah, diseases, parasites. Oh man. Heck, a druid in weather would be the worst. We know in history that well equipped, well supplied troops were completely demoralized just by battling in the wintertime. You know, Drew says, carry a heavy load, which are mostly meat shields I can throw to catch the bullets that were meant for me. So, what's your equipment? I strapped to my back 3 individuals. Wait, what? No, I'm carrying 3 human beings, and they're going to be meat shields. Yeah, one could say I carry the whole army. Exactly. Oh man. Mm-mm-mm. Z says a dragon which breathes time. Watch your ally age up as the dragon blows flame on them. But those that dodge through the smoke get younger. Ow. Aging people stasis, time stasis. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. That's awesome. Although based on the culture of your setting, you could throw a ton of things in like personal combat. Uh, I know the movie gets blasted, but I love the movie Troy, in which we have our sand and sandals combat, and we get to see Achilles fight against Hector, and the battle start like both sides like calm down because they want to see this battle with these warriors, some of the greatest warriors ever, and Petrocles gets killed, and Brad Pitt's all mad because he can't have sex with his nephew or cousin or whatever it is. Listen, we in the movie they don't show it, but we know they were doing that. And more power to them. They were both kind of cute. Thomas Anderson says, I kind of got the idea, I think, for these 2 dragon breaths from the bite of the Komodo dragon and its bite being so dangerous due to its bacteria in its saliva. That's kind of we should have brought that up on the Day of Dragons. Maybe we'll get back to that because the Day of Rot is coming up, so we'll come up with that. And hell, I could change it if I want to. It's not in stone. Zamora says, well, the concept is, do you tank the attack or do you dodge? Sometimes it's better to let it hit you so you don't get too young. Now, no, that's a thing. That's a real thing, right? Where even in a day of war, sometimes, okay, we know in history this was a successful thing. The landing of soldiers on the beach in Normandy during World War II was a thing that was a success. But when you take a look at Saving Private Ryan and you see the opening scene of that, you're going, we literally just put 16 to 21-year-olds literally into a meat grinder. And was it worth it? And the success of that would tell people, yes, it was worth it because someone needed to jump into the meat grinder. Someone needed to give the order to put people into the meat grinder, but maybe there was no other way. And those in leadership had to say to themselves, is it worth the lives we know are going to be lost, knowing that we're going to drop people literally, that they're going to be, we're going to leave soldiers as meat shields for other soldiers so that we can overrun. And that's a real decision that military folk have to decide on, and the player characters might have to decide on that too, right? It's crazy. Drew says Troy is somewhat of a guilty pleasure for me too, and it is not just because of the handsome men there. Yeah, it's that. Listen, they were kind of oiled up. I gotta admit, right? And I'm a little jealous there, and maybe a little part of my brain is like I'm a little kind of like, yeah, I'm feeling kind of good about this. Looking around myself, right? But to be honest though, I also I like history and I like the mythology of. I like how they turn the I like how they turned the play and the ballad into a air quotes realistic battle, because Achilles wasn't a god or born from a deity, but he did get to talk to his mom, and you weren't they didn't show her as a godling, but maybe she was and maybe she wasn't, and like I like that. uh Ta bringing the science. De-aging. Whole race of dragons that have a sonic blast that kills and damages, but one is a mutant and the frequency causes de-aging. Are you saying that there's a possibility of life extension through sound waves? Hmm. Zamar says the day of war could be dealing with the after effect of war, either as the losers or the winners. That's a big deal too. Oftentimes we in modern day like to think of ourselves as rebels, like, down with the system. War sucks. Down with the system. Those in control are a-holes. If we just tear the system down, everything will be better. The problem is that what happens is when there's a successful rebellion, those that have committed the rebellion and are succeeding then have to do all the boring stuff. You got to feed people. You got to have trash disposal. You have to have water and health services. You need to create jobs. You have to clean the roads and have clean running water and livestock, and somebody's got to work on the farms, even though everyone's like, well, what do I get? And of course there's always going to be people that's like, what do I get? Where's my stuff? Right. For having sacrificed everything I had to get into the war effort. Right. You told me I would be reimbursed for my blacksmithing and making all those weapons. What now? you know and that's the difficult part of winning in a war. And then all the people who have bad feelings. There is a very famous photograph during the United States war in the Philippines, and there's a gentleman who's putting a bullet into a person who is um, on their knees. Right, it's an execution. And at the time, the people there were like, we don't want to be colonized by anybody, and anyone who had any help. And so this was in Vietnam. I apologize. I'm thinking something else. So anyone who had any relationship with the Allies, trying to ally themselves with the United States, is going to be put to death. The problem with that is everyone else sees it. And so just like leadership, you want to have enough punishment to correct a deficiency, but too much punishment makes people rebel. And it can be very difficult. And too lenient of a thing, people can feel like they can't get away with murder, literally. So yeah. My cat. Reading. All right, here. Jojo looks interesting, but usually I'm quite bored with anime. Okay. Z says, you win a war, you will have those who want to rebel because you had to do unethical things to win, or because you did the ethical thing and let horrible people go off scot-free. Yeah, and there's no way to appease both sides, right? There, it's the do we have a fair trial or do we put them to death? And no matter what decision you make, you're going to piss off the other side. And then you have to engage in politics. Those rich nobles that everybody hates are rich, and they're also nobles. And there's a reason why they're rich and nobles, because people believe in nobility. People follow the money, and disrupting that. Like, there's going to be a movie about Napoleon coming out that's going to have like Joaquin Phoenix in it and stuff. It looks really good, but Napoleon, if I'm not mistaken, armed the peasantry to win these wars. But guess what? The nobility hated that. And to this day, the nobility lost because of that, across the board, because once you start arming the peasantry, teaching them that they can fight back, teaching them the ways of war, and realizing the peasantry goes, we could have been doing this the whole time. Damn, right? You can't put that back in the bottle. There's a lot of stuff that happens after war or even before war. Before war, what happens? You have to have a war economy, wartime economy. You may have to force conscription into a war. That blacksmith that's making a lot of money with horseshoes and nails and plows is now making weapons of war. Does the blacksmith really want to do that? The money might be good, maybe if they're forced to do it. um Things like that. Mufa says, don't know why this just made me recall the myth series of books by Robert Aspirin and the realm that solved their conflicts with the big game rather than traditional warfare. That also, the day of war, that could be very well be a thing. Maybe there's a giant arena or a countryside or a place picked by servants of the divine, avatars of the deities that pick each of the heads of nation and go, here in this location, throw a big, I don't know, 5-story spear down in the ground, cracks the earth right here in this place. 8 months from now, 3 fortnights or whatever, I don't know, battle will be taking place and your best and brightest will be here. And this is where the war will begin and end. And could you have a war like that? Hell yeah. Why not? Hell, you could have a war on different planes of existences. TA says the winners of the day of war are those who figure out that not all interactions have to be win-lose and escape the nasty after effects of war by discovering the win-win solution. Yeah, but and I'm not arguing. I'm playing devil's advocate for you here, TA. Um, Win-win situations, despite the fact that we know that those kind of situations are beneficial, aren't sexy. It just being a bully and making the other person bow down to you and letting everybody know it is very sexy. It is a thing you can sell. It's something you can portray. It's something other people are like, yeah, they're a badass. Yeah. We see that in politics today, where one political party wants to completely blast the other political party. No one thinks it's sexy to reach across the aisle and go, you know what? We came to a consensus. Both of us lost a little bit. Both of us gained a little bit. And we're still friends at the end of the day. You can't sell that to people. We have social media that's built around blasting people, right? Yeah. So basically, Day of War does not end until someone figures out that win-win secret. Ooh, which then spreads the infection of peace, starting the Day of Peace. I like that. Maybe, yeah, you could have a powerful force like the gods or something. Like, hey, the day of war never ends. It just keeps going on. That would be really bizarre. Like, the players are like, yay, we won the battle, I guess the day of war is over. They go to sleep and then all of a sudden they're woken in the middle of the night. 12:01 the next day happens, and giant machines come storming through the forest and stuff. The PCs are like, "What the hell?" And NPCs are waking them up from their nice restful sleep. Like, the war's still going. PCs are like, "What the hell just happened? We won already yesterday." Nuh-uh. The war's continuous. Warhammer 40K, right? 40,000 years of war. You also have the new tech that comes up from wars. Yeah, yeah. A lot of our medical techniques came from the Nazis and the Japanese due to their more questionable researches. Hell, the United States' entire highway system came from those that were created in Nazi Germany to allow aircraft and tanks to move quickly from one location to another. And if I'm not mistaken, even the United States has very straight highway systems to allow planes to land on them during the war footing or something like that. Yeah, 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 yeah. There's a lot of stuff we've learned from war. There's one of which I can think of off the top of my head is someone created a powder that can be very easily used to pack an open wound to stop the bleeding. And I know Thomas Anderson probably, or Dead Man's going to be able to easily find this, but and I believe that came up during the Gulf War. if I'm not mistaken, anyway. It was something about like open wounds and this powder that you can pack into an open wound, which was a whole lot better than trying to put a bandage over it where it would just keep bleeding and stuff like that. Yeah. Drew says you get a win and you get a win and everybody gets a win on the day of war. Kind of nasty. And here's the other thing: people tend to have long memories when it comes to having their their allies murder killed. Right? Um, you know, everyone wins in the war. There's great peace, and then you have both sides going, "Yeah, but the other side, they did the thing to the people I love," and then it starts all over again. And you will have to redesign a map. You just defeated a group of people who hated you for killing their family. If you let them join forces, you give them a gun against you. Yeah, that's a big fear of reaching across an aisle to befriend someone on the other side, right? The minute you reach across to your enemy, your friends look at you like a traitor. Yeah, war and porn, the driving force of innovation. Yeah, it sure is. Damn. Yeah, hey, listen, you want to perfect VR? You want to perfect AI? Turn it over to the porn industry. Oh yeah. You want to perfect human like acting robots? Yeah. It's unfortunate, but yeah. Scheiss says the U.S. highway system being inspired by the Nazis has kind of sort of been debunked. They were working on highways already before World War II. No. I don't mean that, but I hear what you're saying because am I a historian? No, but yes, the highway system. There's something else. Um, I can't think of it right now. There's lots of things that we've pulled from war. Aluminum. I believe the uses of intricate uses of aluminum and plastics. I think happened because of war. Um, Weapons always get better. The way we kill each other always advances in war. It always. I mean, heck, it's where nuclear weapons came from, right? Yeah, if you get X plane and at all the air landing strips on Earth, took out all the landing strips on Earth because it shows every single one, even just little strips of grass, you would be amazed at how many landing strips and airports there really are on Earth. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure every military around the world knows where those places are and can easily confiscate them to use them for their own purposes, right? Or how close one may be to you without you realizing what it was. Yep, yeah. Drugs and spices as well. Yeah, I wish you were wrong, but you are. But you aren't. Yeah. Porn and war. Yeah. Or how Warhammer 40K is 40,000 years of the Emperor being alive. There are lots of periods of peace in that time frame. Now, I'm going to challenge you a little bit there, Dead Man. Is that really peace, or is that just like slight? Is that the gaps while everyone starts reloading, right? Right? Wound seal powder is what you're thinking of. That's it. That's what it's called. I didn't know the name of it, but yeah, there's like a powder that you can put in the wounds that have created, and I'm not sure how often it's used in civilian life, but probably something close to it. Um, it's probably being used today. I just don't know how expansive it is. TA says the highway system was pushed due to fear of being attacked and not being able to mobilize our forces in time. Because I do remember a highway system. The idea was that to have a highway system, we could move lots of people and supplies from one place to another very quickly, like tanks and trucks and things like that, if the United States gets attacked. And of course, every country from around the world starts using an idea like that as well. But anyway, TA says the highway system was being pushed due to fear of being attacked and not being able to mobilize our forces in time. So they were intended to make moving our tanks and weapons fast. See, you already said it. I didn't even read it. Yes, of course, the Nazi infrastructure did inspire all sorts of other stuff the Americans adopted. Yeah, we always did. Well, let's not forget that we always smart people putting ethics and morality aside. Smart people learn from people doing smart things, and sometimes we can get there can be a conflict even in there can be a conflict even in doing that, like learning from people doing human experimentation and then finding out that we get a benefit from it, and it's like do you perform great advances in medicine, knowing that you learned that from people who committed atrocities, right? And I'm not pointing a particular side. I'm just saying that in general. Well, some would say yes, others would say no, and it's you could have that ethical problem will stick with us probably for a millennium. Samara says, "Don't forget the best invention that came from war: sliced bread." Yeah, and don't forget good old speed and heroin. Yeah, 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 yeah. We brought back a lot of drugs. Lots of drugs came back from wars. Lots of them. Yep. I still do not get the appeal of sliced bread. Maybe I'm weird, but I love to cut my German bread style bread on my own. We that's not such a we do have sliced and unsliced bread here in the States, but I think of unsliced bread as more we think of that as a it's not a normality amongst, I believe, the greater population, just because sliced bread is a it's very quick, but when you get to sit down and slice your own bread, it's kind of a for me it's a uh, uh, it's a an embracing of the time and effort it would take to do such a thing. So yeah, yeah, we listen. We're the United States. We are the potpourri of the world, right? We're the gumbo of the world. We have a little bit of everything here. So yeah, you want to find some unsliced bread, you're going to find great places that make bread. But as a whole, I don't know. It's it's always off to the side. What is peace but the time used to feed the dogs of war? Yeah, yeah, hell yeah, hell's yeah. Yeah. Also, flamethrowers are still good for clearing fields of men and diseased plants. Yeah. Agent Orange, all kinds of shit like that. Yeah. Pre-sliced bread allows for even quick and even handouts and use to save time and money. Yep. 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 There's a lot of things that happen in terms of war. But at the end, we've come to the end. The sun gets ready to set on this day of war. I don't know if you could actually literally have theoretically only 24 hours of war. Although if the player characters solve, air quotes, solve the situation, it's possible they solved it. But I love the idea of the day of war never ends until the win-win situation is given out. I love that idea. But again, this is just a spitballing ideas. This is used for you guys out there in the whole gaming community to take an idea and just be spawned and go, oh, I want to steal that idea. That's what we're here for. It's also for me and for you guys to practice being creative. And like a muscle, our heart, our thighs, our chest, our arms, our brain also needs to be exercised as well. So come here for a little bit of that too, to just be inspired. And if you've gotten anything out of this and all of our co-hosts that take place in this show live at a god awful time here in the States and a much more reasonable time elsewhere around the world, please like, share, subscribe, point out different things to people about this show, and be notified. Although we go live 6 a.m. Monday through Friday, so you won't be too much surprised by that. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Love with your heart, and remember, peace is a lie, and the day of war is eternal. So pick up your gun, roughneck. Do you want to live forever? Yeah. Chrome. Witness me. Yeah, yeah, it's unfortunate. Witness me. So anyway, guys, let's put this back up here. The day of war. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Fuck, I just forgot what tomorrow is. Damn it. And I promised myself I would remember it. I can't pronounce that. In broken US and English, Frohis Bergfest and Happy Hump Day. Don't know what that is, but for those out there who understand what that is in Germany, happy. See you all on Vice Friday. Ooh, chrome and shiny. Witness me. We're out. Peace and war.